Failure isn't final, it's feedback. And in retail media, some of the best strategies are born from spectacular stumbles. Today, I'm talking with brand leaders about those moments when greatness rejected their first application. You'll hear about a product reformulation gone sideways, an agency transition that crashed and burned before succeeding the second time, an Instacart category takeover that drained budgets with minimal returns, and why managing up became a critical skill after initial communication failures. These aren't just stories of what went wrong, they're blueprints for what eventually went right. Because in retail media, sometimes you need to fail spectacularly before you can succeed strategically. Let's dive in. Good morning and welcome to the Retail Media Breakfast Club. I'm your host, Kiri Masters, and every weekday at 6 a.m. Eastern, I bring you candid and real discussions in the world of retail media and marketplaces in just 10 minutes. So bring your own cup of coffee and we'll get smarter about retail media together. Now let's hear from Justin Bomberowitz, Director of Ecommerce at WILDE Brands.
We've failed a few times. I always thought Amazon would go up whenever I joined a company. I always thought that when I get in, I could put a playbook together and Amazon would go up. Joining Smart Suites, it was May of 2021. The big influx of COVID orders had come in, stayed in. They had gone through a reformulation. And there was a couple of things and complications with how they came to market with it. And they had a playbook. We ran the playbook. The playbook wasn't working very well on Amazon. So we had to scrap it completely and start again. And so what I thought was going to work didn't. And we had to hold hands with a lot of people, our commands, our co-pack, the board, executives, everyone down to writing content and creating SKUs. So that took some time, but learned a lot, learned that there's not just one playbook for Amazon and you have to have a couple options.
Now let's hear from Jamie Roller, Director of Marketplaces at Dr. Squatch.
Yeah, I can tell you about a recent example where greatness rejects all applicants has been applicable. We moved over to a new ad agency at Dr. Squatch, and before we were using an algorithmic solution with an agency attached to it that was delivering fine results, but we thought we could do better. And we decided to make the move to a new agency, and it went absolutely horribly. Our results were terrible. It was like a black box for us. And we immediately reverted back, and it felt like a failure, felt like a disaster. We didn't know what went wrong. However, we were still pretty certain that we needed to make the move. And so after a long process of vetting new agencies, new SaaS vendors, we found someone who we thought was the right fit, and we made the move and did it in a much more gradual way. And the results after several months were absolutely astounding. It was just super great. And I think we realized that you need to make the transition slowly, and you really need to have the right partner who's a fit for your goals, not just a partner who's had good referrals. And yeah, it was definitely second time worked type of experience for us.
Now let's hear from Nem Lazic, e-commerce channel manager at Zevia.
One of the ones that comes to mind is our Instacart. We had a really broad campaign that we were looking at for awareness. It's more of a category takeover. So really, really a little higher up the funnel, and it just kind of blew up on us. The ROI was negligible. Click-through rates were terrible. We spent through the budget really quickly. And what we found was we served a ton of impressions to very, very uninterested eyeballs. So that was one where we're like, all right, well, maybe we don't need to go that high up the funnel, because I don't think we have at that point, maybe the distribution is not there. Maybe the shelf space just isn't there. We're not commanding the digital shelf space for this high of an activation. So we had to take a look at that and say, all right, well, I don't think we're there as a brand to keep doing these massive upper funnel engagements. Let's focus our energies a little bit more downstream, and we can really win over that conversion. And I think that's something where you can drastically fail and then learn better.
Now let's hear from Julie Liu, Director of Digital Commerce at Ghirardelli Chocolate Company.
That quote really resonates with me. And I think it might resonate for a lot of your audience too, because I, like many others in e-com and digital, am very ambitious. And there have been multiple times in my career where I've put my neck out there for a promotion. And I realized that each time I was unsuccessful, it was because I was hoping that my work would speak for itself. So I realized that the times where I was successful, it was when I stopped focusing on working hard or working long hours, but really focused on working smarter. And so from the lens of e-commerce or digital commerce or retail media, it was about making sure that my work and my impact to the company was visible enough to the organization. So having proactive conversations about my growth and also building relationships, not just with my boss, but probably more importantly, my boss's peers. Just knowing how often digital and e-com tend to shift around in organizations, I realized that it was really important to think about who my future boss could be. So when I think about, greatness rejects all first-time applicants, I think about it from the lens of my career and how I've evolved and the strategies that I've employed to help me be in the role that I am today.
That's super. That's personal branding within a company.
Personal branding, exactly. Yeah, you got to build your brand outside of your 9 to 5, right? Because you never know what the next opportunity could be or where it could come from.
I've heard really good stories from people who create a regular email communication out to the organization. And it's like, you want to be, I think Todd Hassenfeld from Colgate Palmolive told me that this is what he does. He has a weekly email about like news and trends in the space, and he sends it out, and you want to be added to the distribution list, I'll add you in. And it's there to educate and help people understand what's going on in our world and break it down and add some commentary. But also it raises your profile in a really meaningful way, like you said, not just within your own direct reporting line, but a little outside of that too.
Right.
Well, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Retail Media Breakfast Club. We meet here every day at 6 a.m. Eastern. So be sure to subscribe and get your daily dose of insights, trends, and hot takes in the world of retail media and marketplaces.